So now it's the Aztron touring boards we're going to look at on this SUPboarder review. 3 boards, similar sort of shapes, different sizes, 10'6" long, 11'6" long, and 12'6". A bit of information about Aztron: they're a very new brand for this year. We've already reviewed some of their all-round inflatable boards, and they also make composite boards as well. They are definitely coming at the market at a good price point and giving a very fresh new look to their iSUPs, and they've already got a lot of paddleboarders on the water already in 2019, so they're looking like a strong brand going forward into the future. So we have the 10'6" Terra, we have the 11'6", and we have the 12'6" Neptune. All the boards are 32 inches wide, they're all 6 inches thick, gives them a good amount of volume and a good amount of stability. The smallest board is 270 litres in volume, the middle size 11'6" is 306 litres in volume, and the bigger 12'6" is 339 litres in volume. They're not the lightest boards on the market because there is quite a lot of materials in this board, and they're double chamber boards as well. The smallest board weighs 11.5 kilos, the middle size board weighs 12.5 kilos, and the bigger 12'6" weighs 13 kilos. But they are very competitive when it comes to price point. With a paddle, leash, bag and a pump, the smallest board is $449, the middle size board is $499, and the bigger 12'6" is $549. So, materials of the boards, as I just said, they're not the lightest of boards on the market, but that is because there is a lot of materials in this board. So these double chamber boards, remember double chamber, if you're not sure, is where you basically have like an internal board that you can pump up, and then you have an external chamber around the board. So 2 boards in effect. There it requires more glue, a bit more material, adds a lot more to the overall stiffness of the board. And all the boards are finished off with double layer fusion technology, so they're very hard wearing boards, reinforced rails. That does put the weight up. When it comes to light boards, the compromise is the lighter the board is, that isn't so strong. It's not so good at taking the beatings. These are quite heavy duty boards, and they are absolutely happy at ramming themselves up the beach and having the kids jump on them on the beach for sure. They have a recommended PSI pressure of 15, so that is for the internal chamber, it's 15, and the external board is 15 as well. When we put these boards through our deflection test, because they're double chamber, you do get a lot more stiffness. The boards only dropped 13 millimeters. Remember, a deflection test is where we put them on a gap of 1.5 meters apart, and we put a weight of 75 kilograms in the center, and then we measure how much the board dropped. At 13 millimeters, that's right up there with some of the stiffer boards on the market. The most stiffest boards in the market are just coming in the high 8s, 9s, 10s, so they are very stiff boards. The most flexible boards in the market are sitting around the mid 25 millimeters, so it's a fairly stiff board. You can see that's where the weights come in. Double chamber gives you that stiffness of the board, gives you a much more of a composite feeling board under your feet. So looking at the overall shape, fittings and features that you get with the Aztron touring range. So all the boards, as you can see, they are very similar in overall shape. Pulled in at the nose, relatively wide throughout the width, and pulled into a slightly round tail at the back of the board. They're all 32 inches wide, so they are very stable, and they all feel relatively similar when it comes to stability. Obviously the different lengths, and that does affect the overall glide and the tracking of the board, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Stuff on top of the board to note: well, first off, the Aztron graphics, the same with all of the boards that we've tested. Bright, bold, very different from any other brand so far. A very fresh, new looking iSUP brand, and I really like the way that they come out of the gates running, and this is a very new look, and it's very bold, and I think it really does suit the brand well. These are touring based boards, so you will be able to obviously go touring with them. There isn't loads of storage potential here, but there's enough for you to do an overnighter and easily fit a dry bag under the front. You've got a large, soft, diamond gripped EVA deck pad, makes it really comfy to stand on. You've got a nicely padded, neoprene backed handle, nice and comfy when you're carrying the boards. And the deck pad goes right to the back, and then it's finished off with a raised kick pad in a different EVA material. That's really nice when you want to get back into your step back turns and you're moving around the board. Bit of a different sort of feel in your feet, makes you feel and understand where you are on your board. Much easier than having one deck pad straight to the back without any difference of type of grip. Underneath at the back of the board, all the boards are finished off with the same Aztron fin box that we've already tested in the all-round review. A slide-in clip fin box. It's a very easy fin to use. It's a sort of general fin that you'd find on most paddle boards, and it's okay to get you going in a straight line. It's not the biggest of fins, so if you were going to load up this with a bit more weight, you might want to upgrade to a bigger size fin, but for general paddling, that fin size and shape is absolutely adequate. So paddling these boards on the water, well, all of them being 32 wide, as I said, it gives you a very similar amount of stability. Nice and stable. The lengths do vary. The longer the board is, the more tracking, the more glide you're going to have, the more waterline length you're going to have, the easier it's going to be to paddle in a straight line, and the easier it is going to be to keep the board moving across the water. The smaller base board, the 10.6, is definitely the most maneuverable, and the 11.6 obviously sits in between the two. So if you're a lighter person looking for a more maneuverable board, then you definitely are going to be looking towards a shorter base board. The longer the board is definitely much better for doing longer distances, going touring, going on a mini adventure. All the boards can still take a lot of weight from dry bags, but having the extra length just makes it a little bit easier for paddling further if you're putting weight on the front of the board. One thing that you definitely can't not notice on these boards is the rocker line, the nose rocker in particular. The flip right on the tip of the nose there, very distinctive when you're paddling it. You can see it on the camera there. When you're paddling obviously in choppy or bumpy conditions, that is fantastic for letting the water go under the board. No waves will catch over the nose of this board. So if you are paddling in choppy conditions and paddling into wind, it's absolutely perfect for that. But there is a negative to having a quite heavily nose rockered board, but I'll speak about that in the negatives in a minute. They're not the fastest boards in the water, but they're very comfortable. They feel very stiff underfoot. They're going to get a lot of people into paddleboarding. Doing general paddling, I wouldn't want to take this full-on touring because I don't feel it has enough glide. But for somebody who wants to basically paddle a little bit further than their average all-round sort of board, this is a good sort of range of boards to look at. Get you paddling a little bit further, still gives you stability, and you can still take your mates paddleboarding for the first time at the weekend as well. It gives you that wider range of things you can do with your paddleboard, being a little bit longer in length. So let's have a look at the full package. Yeah, the bag is a little bit more lightweight than your full-on heavy-duty bags. Hasn't got wheels and extra padding around the back, but it's easily going to be a bag that can get you walking to the beach. The pump it comes with is a double action pump. It pumps on the upstroke and on the downstroke. It's not the quickest pumps to get this amount of air in the board because they are fairly big volume boards, but it's very effortless. Easy gets 15 psi in, so even your kids can pump your boards up, but it will take them a bit longer than the bigger double chamber pumps. The leash it comes with is absolutely fantastic, and you also get a basic aluminium paddle, but there is plenty of other paddles that you can upgrade to if you have checked those out on the Aztron website. So who do we think they'll be best suited for? Ability, weight range, and what you're going to do with them? Well, ability, you could easily get on these as beginners, no doubt. They could be first time paddleboards. There still are the magic 32 wide width, which is pretty much when most people get into the sport for the first time or go on a paddleboard for their very first session, is the sort of width you're looking at. Unless you are really wanting a board that's super stable, or you're a heavier rider, you maybe want to go to a 34 wide, but 32 is pretty much the bulk standard width for all people getting into the sport. And really that's how you should treat these boards. The lighter rider looking towards the lighter base board, the heavier rider or the person who wants a bit more stability should look towards the longer board. Having a longer board will actually give you more stability as well as the width, so having a board like the 12.6, it will be more stable, which is why it's better for the heavier riders, or better for people wanting a bit more stability than the smaller 10.6. And the 11.6 obviously just sits in the middle of the two. Weight ranges for all these boards: if you're a 110 kilo person, you're going to be able to ride the 10.6. Up to 120 kilo person is going to be quite happy on the 11.6, and the 12.6 is going to take paddlers up to about 130 kilos. What you're going to be using it for? Well, yes, obviously they're touring boards, but they are sort of light touring boards, maybe one night away. I wouldn't really want to do multiple day trips with these boards because you might not be able to store enough stuff on the front, and there isn't any bungees on the back. Really, I think they're pushing towards more of a range of boards that people who want to paddle further than your general all-round boards. You could still take your friends out and have fun on these at the weekend, but really something for you to cover a bit more ground and have more glide and easy paddling than your shorter based all-round boards. So looking at pros and cons and value for money. Well, the pros, it's a very different look, these Aztron boards, compared to any other brand out there. So you've got a very distinctive, I think, fresh, unique looking board. Good price point, it'll bring value for money in there. You get a lot of board for your money. You get double chamber, a very, very stiff board for the money, and looking at the complete package. So that squares away pros and value for money. Definitely get a thumbs up from us for that. The cons. There's two things really. One is the rocker. The rocker is probably a little bit excessive for your general flat water paddling. If you're going to be paddling in chop, or maybe moving white water down a river, doing a bit more of an exploration side of it on moving water, then this nose is fantastic. And to be honest, when you're paddling it, it's not something you notice, but you do notice it a lot more when you're looking at it from the beach. Having a more of a sort of heavily nose rockered board does make the board a little bit slower because you've got less of a water line in the water. To get the board to go as fast as possible, you basically want the full water line in the water, which is why race boards, if they're 14 foot long, pretty much 14 foot of the board is in the water to give you as much glide and as much water line length as possible. So the more rocker you have on the board, the more the board comes out of the water. So this 12.6, it really feels in speed sense like it's paddling more like an 11.6 because there's quite a lot of the board obviously out of the water. So that's definitely something to bear in mind. It's not a massive thing when you're paddling it, but it is something that will make a difference if you're paddling longer and you're paddling on flatter water, definitely. And the only other thing that takes a little bit of time to get used to is deflating these boards, because they've nicely put the valves in the middle of the boards, which look really good and it's aesthetically pleasing. When you go to deflate them, you obviously roll them from the tail, which is fine, and then you get to the valve section here, and then all the air comes out of the internal chamber, but then you've got to get the air out of the nose section, so you've actually got to roll the nose towards you. Then you can either clip the valves out, and then you can unroll it and roll it fully up, or you can fold it up in the bag in sort of 2 rolls. So it's a little bit more technical than rolling from one end all the way to the other, because your valve isn't at the other end, so you have to be a bit more aware of that. So it's a little bit more of a faff, but I can see why they've done it from a styling point of view. Maybe this is something that Aztron will change in the future. So I hope you found that SUPboarder review interesting and informative. Please go on the SUPboarder website, check out the full review post, and make sure you complete the customer survey. It's great for us to hear what you think of these boards, and also then we can feed back a lot of what you say to the brands to help them improve in the future. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time on SUPboarder, SUPboarder Pro, and on YouTube.